Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is the 8th installment in the Mission Impossible franchise starring Tom Cruise. And after nearly 30 years, it's said that this is the last installment in the franchise. So the big question going into this movie was always going to be, does it stick the landing? I'm a big fan of this franchise. I've recently been rewatching all of them, and I think even with the installments that maybe people don't look at very favorably, I'm still pretty much a fan of each and every one of them. I enjoy seeing the stunts. I enjoy joining our cast of characters. Tom Cruise kills it in every installment with his dedication towards the franchise and just doing all of his own stunts. It's really incredible what he puts on the screen with each installment. So I am predispositioned to lean positive towards this movie, which I think is the case once again here with this one, because I had a great time. Now let me get into the pros for this movie first. Whenever you think of Mission Impossible, you think of the action. So how does it stack up compared to the rest of the installments? I think that the action in this movie is incredible. I won't go into spoilers with this video, but the plane sequence that you see plastered onto the poster had my jaw on the floor. That scene alone is reason enough to see this movie in an IMAX, and that's not even scratching the surface whenever it comes to the other action entailed in this movie. Tom Cruise pushes it to the limits once again, and what I really liked about the action is it incorporated many different types. You know, we've seen him go underwater before, we've seen him go into the air, we've seen him knife fight before, but somehow in this movie, him and the other characters, they're able to incorporate a lot of different types of action. So I thought it was really unique in that way, and all of them were done really well. It's such a shame that the stunts category got added to the Academy Awards once this franchise was complete. Well, I'll get into that in a minute, because if it had been in place for the last 30 years, Mission Impossible would get it every single time that they come out with a movie. It's really incredible what the choreography, the stunt choreographers, I should say, and the entire team, not just Tom Cruise, has accomplished with this. Because, you know, for every Tom Cruise that's not up, you know, hanging onto an airplane, that's really impressive. There's got to be a competent pilot in there, you know, executing to perfection, because you have a man worth like $1 billion hanging off the wing. The entire team that's in charge of the action, the stunts in this movie, I tip my hat off to them. Really incredible job once again. They live up to the hype. But to me, an action scene doesn't have any real teeth if it isn't for the sound mixing. And the sound mixing in this movie is remarkable. It's one of the more underrated components of making a movie, but if you don't have the sound mixing, if you don't have the sound perfectly placed in a scene, you know, adding to the environment, the tension just isn't quite as palpable. But fortunately, the sound team on the Mission Impossible movies are second to none. They knock it out of the park once again. They really add a lot to those action sequences with their capable sound mixing. I'm also really impressed by this movie in the sense that we've seen action films where the stakes are so high, right? You know, if you don't accomplish this mission, it's gonna be the end of the world. Heck, we've seen that with this franchise before. So to me, that makes it harder to get the audience to buy in on it's gonna be the end of the world if our heroes don't successfully complete this mission. But to me, I thought that this movie did a great job of setting the stakes high and at least getting me to buy in. You know, I was bought in that if the crew doesn't accomplish this, it has dire consequences. And I think part of that is how they focused on characters that weren't just on the team that Ethan Hunt has. You know, a lot of this movie focuses on the character of the president and her cabinet. And I thought that interlacing the last several scenes of the movie with those two sets of groups, or those two groups, was really smart and helped bring home the idea that this is the end of the world and not just Ethan Hunt and his team are involved with it. Really, really effective use of editing there. Speaking into some of the performances here, I thought that the team around Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt was really effective this go around. You know, you have Simon Pegg there, you have Ving Rhames there that have been there forever at this point, but with the additions of like Apom Clementif, with Haley Atwell, Greg Tarzan Davis, I thought everyone brought something to the table. I really enjoyed the camaraderie with the team. I wanted to spend more time with them once the movie was over, which I think is about as big of a compliment that you can pay. I also really enjoyed a lot of the side characters in this movie, a lot of them played by actors actors that you probably have seen in other things. I was nervous going into it that I was going to be distracted by seeing these actors, like I was going to be thinking of their previous roles that they're famous for, but I thought that they blended into this franchise very well. It was nice seeing familiar faces in there, but also not having them be distracting. You know, they're actually adding to the plot with their involvement. Something else with some of the side characters here, and this is something that I noticed in Top Gun Maverick also, Tom Cruise produced movies have a real eye of making minor characters with like 5 minutes of screen time feel memorable and feel distinct. In particular, there's a scene in this movie that takes place on a submarine, and there were many characters involved with that, but all of them felt very distinct from one another. And I was trying to think about why that is. And I was thinking about an interview that Tom Cruise did recently about how whenever they're casting for something, they focus in on getting the right actors first and they build the role around that person. You know, it's get the right people in there first, build the role around them. That role will be memorable because it's built around that person. In particular, in this movie, I'm thinking of a side character played by Katie O'Brien. She has not a lot of screen time, but she is very memorable to me. She does have a big role to play in the scene that she's in, but it's everybody else on that submarine too. And, you know, you could say the same thing about Top Gun Maverick with some of the minor characters in the aviation school or the training class that Tom Cruise is leading up in that movie. Even characters that don't have a lot of screen time feel memorable and they feel distinct whenever you're watching the movie. And that's just something that I felt was highlighted in this film as well. And it's super impressive because you look at other movies with characters that have like 30 minutes of screen time and you don't remember that character whenever you're walking out of the movie. So it's super impressive when you have a character play, 2% of a role in the movie, but you're thinking about them after the fact. Just something that came to mind. Now, while I really enjoyed this movie, it's definitely not perfect. I do have some cons here. And first and foremost, I have to say the editing at the beginning of this movie is not very good. I could tell that they course corrected several things after Dead Reckoning came out. They changed up some of this plot, and it felt like a lot of that exposition work was done at the beginning of this movie, sort of before the title card, which I understand that sequence, that part of the movie is supposed to be a little bit faster paced, but upon rewatching the other Mission Impossible movies, they do that so much more effectively than this one does. So there is a way that you can keep it fast paced, but also have it be coherent and well edited. And unfortunately, this movie does not do that in the first portion. Now, once they get to a certain part of the movie, the edit, like I thought that everything was dynamite after a specific scene involving Tom Cruise and Angela Bassett's characters. That's all I'll say. And then going into the beginning as well, I thought that there was way too many callbacks to the earlier installments. I know that they're sort of marketing this as the last in the franchise. They're calling it the final reckoning. We'll see how true that is. But so much of the beginning of the movie felt like it was calling back to previous installments, like it was just exposition dumping, which I cannot stand in movies, and I got pretty tired of it after a while. But then as we push forward into the movie, there were numerous plot conveniences. Many times a character would make a decision where I'm just like, why are you doing that? One in particular, kind of near the beginning of the movie, Tom Cruise's character, Ethan Hunt, decides to run because someone else is in peril. And I was sitting in the theater like, I feel like it would be more effective if you took a car, man. Like, why are you running right now? I get that that's a thing, but come on. But you hear what I'm saying. There are multiple instances in the movies where you're sitting there and you're like, that doesn't really make sense for this person to make that decision at this time, but it's Mission Impossible. You just kind of roll with it. You deal with whatever gets you to the next action scene, right? Now, getting into the villains of this movie, now the entity is like the main villain, right? It's this AI entity that's going to take over the world. At this point we've seen it a million times, so my biggest gripe is it's forgettable, but it serves the movie, so I don't have like a big problem with it. It just isn't super memorable, unfortunately. But the other antagonist of the film, I think his name is pronounced S.A. Morales. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But I didn't love his character in the first movie. Like, to me, the character it's not really in the performance. It's more the character is very mustache twirly, if you know what I mean. It's a little bit too hammy for my taste, and that's dialed up even more in this movie. So just not my favorite villain, personally. And then the last big con that I have could easily go into spoilers, but I'm going to do my best not to. It involves the arc of Pom Clementiev's character. Now, throughout the movie, they are alluding that the character wants to do something to another character. They keep hinting at it, and then at the end of the movie, they don't do that. Now, I don't have a problem with a movie misdirecting the audience, thinking that they're going to do one thing, but then they turn left when they were supposed to go right? I don't necessarily have a problem with that. What I did have a problem with in this movie is Pom Clementiev's character isn't involved at all in the resolution behind what she was aiming to do throughout the movie. And it's not really touched on at the end. I think about this sort of like a song where like Pom Clementiev's arc is the song, but it's without a melody, right? Without that resolution, without her even being involved with the resolution of what she was trying to do. It's like a song without a melody. It felt pretty incomplete. I know that that's really vague, but hopefully once you see the movie, you'll understand where I'm coming from here. And that very well could just be a me thing too. But overall, I really enjoy this movie. It's definitely not perfect. It's definitely not my favorite in the franchise, but on the whole, it's a great time in a theater. I would recommend you go see this on the biggest screen that you can, preferably in IMAX. It's worth every penny. And I said that I was going to get into this earlier in the video. Do I actually think that this is going to be the last installment? I'll say this. At the end of the movie, they do a good job of tying it up to where if they wanted this to be the last one, it could be. However, they could very well go in a certain direction if they chose to do a ninth movie. So I think it's going to end up falling on how financially successful this movie is, because it's no secret that Dead Reckoning did not live up to expectations. It still made like nearly $600 million, right? But for a movie of this price tag, that's not enough to justify another one. But at the end of the day, it falls on if Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie want to do another one, especially Tom Cruise, because this is his franchise. So I personally hope they do another one. I adore these movies. I love all of the stunt work involved with these movies. I love that it's a true cinema-going experience. There aren't many franchises that are quite like that and are able to maintain the quality that this franchise has. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I gave this on my Letterboxd, link down below, a 4 out of 5. But what did you think about the movie? Let me know in your comments down below. And thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Subscribe if you want to see more. Bye, y'all.